practitioners. Dr. Quello's here. We've reached out to practitioners out in St. Louis area, Gilroy, and beyond. Recently we had a mixer, which was great. So we believe that all that reside in San Benito County should be part of this alliance, because after all, it is their healthcare system. Bankruptcy is not necessarily the answer we may be looking for. We are not certain if we have turned over and looked under all the stones. However, if it is indeed inevitable, San Benito Healthcare Alliance, we want to have that opportunity to step in and help. Thank you.
So there was a microphone, but there's not. I'll speak loudly. Hi everybody, my name is Natalie Lacordi. I'm one of the physicians here at Hazel Hawkins Hospital, working with Dr. Gabriel. I appreciate him speaking and telling you a little bit about our group. So beyond being a physician here, I'm a third generation resident. So my grandmothers were here, grandfathers, my parents. This is my home, this is my community. My friends are here, and I don't ever want to be in a place where we don't have a hospital. I think that's a common goal among all of us here. So I'm glad Dr. Gabriel told you about the SBHA. That's the group that we formed to try and help come up with a solution. We do have a plan. We need a little bit more time to solidify the final parts of the plan. Or, as he said, we're working with multiple people and multiple agencies. So we ask that you work with us and we can continue to have the hospital here for everyone. Thank you.
Vanessa Lawford. I'm holding until item number 7. Okay. And then Diane Beck is holding on.
So if there are no other comments on the consent agenda for general comment, we will move on to item number 4. The consent agenda deals with routine and non-controversial matters. The vote on the consent agenda shall apply to each item that has not been removed. A board member may pull an item from the consent agenda for discussion. One motion shall be made to adopt all non-removed items on the consent agenda.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Pack.
Aye.
Director Sanchez. Aye. Director Shelton.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on to the medical executive committee report, Dr. Doty.
He's coming in right now, Jerry.
Oh,
Just text him.
okay. Give him a-
Sure, I'll do my report. It's a quick report for, my report this month is a verbal report. I just have a few follow-up items that I wanted to, follow up from last meeting. As you know, Maple Street has been in escrow for the last almost 60 days. We will close Maple Street this week, and the city has purchased that property. So it should close this Thursday or Friday. The surgery clinic, as we've been reporting for months, has been in the work. The state has changed some of their requirements for those clinics, so our team has worked very closely with them, and that is expected to be licensed soon. The mock survey should be next week from the state, so that should be coming soon. Hopefully next month we can report that clinic has opened. And then the last thing, I just want to point out, there is, in your informational reports, I want to do a special shout out on page 9. This is our workers' comp over the last few years. And the team in employee health has done a really good job at reducing the cost there. So I want to just shout out, back in January of 2018, we spent over $1.6 million for that year. And you can see from the chart that Elizabeth provided how it's gone down. So I wanted to just do a special shout out to that department and all the hard work going behind that and the management they're doing there. It's a department of one, yes it is. So shout out to them.
Dr. Bogey, we're ready for you.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make it brief. This is the Medical Executive Committee Credentials Report, May 17, 2023. I'll go over them like we usually do. New appointments, we have a couple of new teleneurologists being appointed. We have some reappointments. Notably, Dr. Martinez is going to stay on as an active affiliate. No new allied health appointments. No, we have Taylor Snow from the clinic being reappointed, and Dr. Nguyen is an anesthesiologist who's going to be resigning. And that was the credentials report from the Medical Executive Committee for May 17, 2023.
Is there any board questions on the report? Is there any public comment on the approval of the credentials report? If none, I make a motion to approve credentials. Do we have a second?
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Paz?
Aye.
Director Sanchez? Director Schulten?
Aye.
And your responses, please.
Okay, I'll keep the highlights. We had the Pharmacy and Therapeutics Committee met on 4/27/2023. I think the two highlights are that we are now using Tenectaplace for strokes. It has replaced Alteplase, and the evidence is supporting it being superior to Alteplase. So we are with the current times, in fact, a little bit ahead of the curve. So keeping our medicine modern here. We are also looking at drug cost opportunity analysis, which we're looking at high cost meds and seeing if there's other meds that may work in place of those. The next was the Infection Control and Antimicrobial Stewardship Committee, met 5/16/23. Notably, COVID infection rates for employees were significantly down after a little surge in March. And I think notably that blood cultures, when you have blood cultures drawn, they're always reviewed. They take 2 days to culture. Dr. Feblis, our infectious disease doctor, reviews all cultures on a daily basis. And it appears as we're doing things by the book, which is to start with broad spectrum antibiotics and then narrow them down based on the cultures and sensitivities. Department of Radiology met 5/5/23. I think the big note there is that they're just making sure that they're capturing all appropriate charges, looking at their charge master sheet to make sure that's all up to snuff. last but not least, Department of Surgery met on 5/9/23, and the big talk was the new block scheduling for the surgeons, and we're gonna start dropping the mandatory COVID testing for all pre-surgical patients. It'll be only for symptomatic. So if you're asymptomatic, it won't be required to get a COVID test prior to surgery. That's it.
Thank you. Moving on the agenda, we've already had our chief executive officer report, so we'll go to finance.
Thank you. I'm going to start with an update on the distressed hospital loan program. The good news is it was signed by the governor, AB 112. What we do know is it's up to $150 million. It's going to be off. I'm sorry. Is this better? Is this better?
No.
It's not on.
It's not.
How about this?
You're speaking
Yeah.
forward.
I'll try to speak louder for everyone. How's this? A little better? Okay, so what we do know about the $150 million program, it will be offered at 0% interest. The loans are repayable over a 72-month period, and there's an 18-month grace period before the payment has to be made. Also, the program will sunset on December 31st of 2031. That's all good news. Unfortunately, what we don't know is what the number of hospitals that will qualify, the amount that each hospital will be able to borrow of the $150 million, and also the timing of the payments. What's happened so far, CHFFA and HCI, they're writing the policy and procedure, but there was a survey that opened May 15th. Our hospital has already filled out the survey. We have requested $10 million of the funding. I haven't received information back other than it was accepted. The loan applications are scheduled that we can submit them in June of this year, so that's a few months away. Again, we haven't received the policy and procedures. We just know that the program is live, so we're working toward borrowing from that program. I have a short update. We'll go to page 25. So we'll break it down statistically. For the month of April, the district, the acute population, our census was 16 and a half. It's below where we're tracking last year and what we budgeted to see. Year to date, it's right at 18. Again, below last year to date after 10 months, and what we have been budgeted to do, but also tracking. The census this week has dropped under 10, so it's the smallest census we've seen. So month to date, we're at 14 and a half for an average daily census. That's for the acute facility. For skilled nursing, I believe today the census reached 97. So that's the busiest we've been at the skilled nursing facility since pre-COVID. A couple of items, 10 months into the year, we did receive funding for the workers retention program. That funding was $565,500. It was received during the month of April. That payment was sent out on the April 28th payroll. So the employees who were qualified for the program would receive that in their check. The state determined who was qualified and who was not qualified. So that payment went out. We were also expecting this month, we were notified there's going to be a true-up payment for QIP for PY4, which is calendar 2021. The net of that true-up payment is $895,000. That will come somewhere in the future, maybe June or July. We also are expecting for 2022 that the skilled nursing facility will receive a supplemental payment. We reported that this month, and that will probably come in July. So at the end, as it looks like we're doing better for this month than we did, these adjustments are year-to-date adjustments, our cash flow is still at under 29 days and is projected not to increase past 30 days over the coming months. You have any questions on the month of April? Okay, so that's it for the finance at this point.
Moving on to item 7, public hearing. Consider board resolution number 2023-27, authorizing the filing of a chapter 9 petition, investing authority to file, and resolution number 2023-28, adopting a pendency plan. This is an open hearing. Do we have a report on that?
Yes, we do have a report. We would like to start our report. Would like to interview the professionals that will be helping us tonight. Michael Sweet is here from Fox Rothschild. He will be opening up the staff report. And then we will also go to Carol Fox, who will be on Zoom. She will help with the report as well. Nick is here from Fox Rothschild. He is on Zoom as well. And then Seth is here from B. Riley to answer any questions too. Carol from B. Riley will be doing the majority of the report and helping us go through the pendency plan. That is in your packet, starting on page 28.
With the folks at B. Riley and the hospital's leadership, we took over that hump and through that fiscal emergency situation. And we're continuing to work hard to help the district right the ship. The ultimate result of that work, however, has led us to conclude that a Chapter 9 petition is probably the best next step for the district. I want to be clear, and I heard some of the discussion earlier on and some of the discussion in the hallway, and I've read some of the things that have been written and reported. As we talk about a Chapter 9 bankruptcy filing here, Chapter 9 does not mean the hospital is closing. For those who are here who are concerned, as I'm sure you all are concerned, that the hospital remain open, that is precisely what Chapter 9 will allow. It will allow the hospital to remain open, the staff to remain employed, and most crucially, services to continue. The continuity of care in San Diego County of this important facility will remain. And we're going to walk through kind of the meaning of these steps and what you would expect if you do vote in favor of these two resolutions to authorize the filing of Chapter 9 bankruptcy and the implementation of the pendency plan. We'll be hearing, as Gary noted, from Carol Fox and Seth Friedman at B. Riley. They'll talk about the pendency plan. My colleague, Doug Koffroth, who's on Zoom, will be here to talk in more detail about the staff report after that. And with that, I will yield to Carol Fox.
Hi, good evening. As Michael said, I'm Carol Fox. I'm a senior managing director at B. Riley, and my firm has been advising along with Fox Rothschild, the district, since November of last year. And so since that time, we've seen a lot of improvement, and so there's hope. But in that hope, we need to act responsibly. And so just to give you a little bit of flavor about, where we are and where we were and where we're going, I'll try and be succinct and move it along, because I know a lot of you have things on your mind that you'd like to discuss as well. So when we started this engagement, basically we were greeted by Mark. I always remember, I'll refer to him as the financial mayor, and Mark was extremely concerned that the district was going to run out of cash in December. And that was a truism. The district was going to run out of cash in December. And where we stand today, but the district didn't run out of cash in December, and why, I'll get to that. But where we stand today is the district has approximately 21 days of cash on hand. And that's gonna drop down to 13 days of cash on hand by the end of December if nothing else is done. And just to give you an idea, all of this is in your pendency plan. A good number for cash on hand is not in the tens, it's in the hundreds, and it's basically above 200 days of cash on hand. And that's sufficient capital to propel an organization, not only to meet its operating cash flow, but also to meet its capital needs. And so that's it. So there's a reason why I said that, and there's a place where I'm going with that. So what happened between December and now to increase the lifeline of the hospital? Well, a lot of things happened, and you can thank your administration for a lot of it. Mark and Mary were able to organize the release of funds that were scheduled to be received by the district in the later part of the year earlier. So that's one thing. So there was an advancement of funds. The district also got a loan. And then again, kudos to the district administration, but they also were able to cash manage and reduce expenses where appropriate, so that that also extended the financial lifeline of the hospital. All told, those three tranches of efforts generated about $11 million in cash flow. So that was really necessary. Now let's back up to what I said a moment ago about current days of cash on hand and what a healthy hospital system has. And the reason why I bring this up is because when we look toward the future, there's a couple of options that we've looked at and we've reviewed. One of the options is in your pendency plan and in your handouts, I believe, which is called the Adams Report. And that report has a lot of great ideas for a healthy hospital system. They cost in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and they take a lot of time. And those are two things that we don't have either of right now. We don't have hundreds of millions of dollars right now, and we don't have time. So that doesn't mean it's not a good idea down the road. What it means is it's not a good idea now, okay? Secondly, another thing that we can't do is we can't sit back on the cash that we've got and hope things are going to get better, because they are not. They are not going to get better. And what's more, and Mark and Mary are acutely aware of this, is that we pushed the supplemental cash that was going to be received in the later part of the year to the earlier part of the year. There is no more supplemental cash coming in. Outside of a loan, there's no more cash outside of a few payments till the end of the year. And the supplemental cash is very necessary to bridge the gap between the routine patient cash receipts and the routine operating expenses. Okay. So that brings us to, we've now talked about things that we don't think will work, which is sitting back and doing nothing or investing hundreds of millions of dollars that we don't have. So what will work? Well, what works with especially small critical access hospitals is the collaboration, either via a sale or via some sort of a shared services agreement with a larger healthcare system. And why does that work? It works because the larger healthcare systems have the ability to purchase at reduced cost and the ability to get reimbursed at higher rates. And then add to that the infrastructure and the IT systems of a larger hospital, and you kind of got the perfect model. But there's a little bit of a stumbling block here, and the issue is that we've been marketing the hospital for a while, and the issue really is, that the district is not as, it's got some financial problems that the strategic partners would like to see addressed. And so that's something that we need to do, okay? Which kind of brings us to the pendency plan, okay, in the event of a Chapter 9 filing. And what does that look like? Okay, so the first step is really the, what you're looking at in your plan as attachment D, okay? And that attachment basically assumes continued operating adjustments and cost savings, along with proposed savings by various constituencies, namely the unions. Another thing that it contemplates that affects the whole hospital is increased health premiums. So it's not broad sweeping changes, it's not wage changes, but it is mostly changes in benefits combined with operating savings that will get us through what attachment D or the pendency plan looks like if we only make operating changes and then some adjustments to health benefits. Along with that, then there's also the phase 2 where if we start addressing some of these things, I think that the strategic partners will notice that, and I think they'll feel more confident about purchasing the hospital. And that's not something that I say because I'm a financial advisor and I think that that's a good idea. I've actually sold hospitals in bankruptcy as a bankruptcy trustee. And I happen to know from firsthand experience that buyers don't want to take on a lot of problems. And so if we start making some positive headway here with some of the problems that we are facing, I think that will be very encouraging to the buyers. And then the last step is, look, if a buyer doesn't come to the table, we cannot sit here and do nothing. And that's the reason really for the filing now as opposed to the filing later, because the transition cost of transitioning patient care is not cheap, it's not inexpensive, and especially in light of the fact that there's 2 operating skilled nursing facilities, it's something that we need to take very seriously as a group. And that's why we're coming to you today and not 6 months from now to address this issue. So with that, I've said what I've come here to say, and I know you'll have questions, and if you do, I think we wait till the end of the presentation, am I correct, or do they ask them now?
Let's wait and see if the board has an opportunity to ask questions after your presentation. Okay, Nick, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Nick Cockroth. As my colleague Michael said, I'm an attorney at Fox Rothschild. We're the special restructuring counsel to the district. And what I wanted to go through after Carol's presentation was, okay, we have this information now, and we're at the inflection point where it's time to decide whether or not bankruptcy makes sense, with the objective of finding out whether or not bankruptcy would actually achieve these kind of long-term goals that Carol talked about. So we did that in the staff report, and I kind of wanted to expand on that a little bit here. And for context, over the last 5 months, the district has been in the process of both mandated confidential mediation with its stakeholders, which is required under California law. And then following that process, when the district didn't get to an agreement with every constituency that needed to, we've been engaged in continuing non-confidential negotiations. So over a 5-month period, I think Carol mentioned $11 million worth of savings. Obviously, you've seen the cash flow forecast change relatively dramatically from when we were last here in November. There's been a lot that's been accomplished, but also Carol mentioned it's not enough to get the district to a sustainable long-term place. So that's what gets us now to considering bankruptcy. And I kind of wanted to go through what the advantages and disadvantages of a bankruptcy case are from our perspective, so we can kind of try to weigh out what this decision might result in, both the good and the more challenging. The number one thing that we need to consider that Michael mentioned earlier on in the presentation is that the district is going to be permitted to continue normal operations without change. The bankruptcy case is filed from the day before the filing to the day after. There should be no noticeable change within the district. It's a much more administrative change. And the interesting thing about Chapter 9 is that, unlike a lot of chapters of the Bankruptcy Code, there's less bankruptcy court intervention that can occur. The district really is permitted, more than other chapters of the Bankruptcy Code, to continue operating normally. And that includes the continued provision of healthcare services, continuing to fund payroll and related obligations to trade vendors, everything we consider as ordinary course operations. Another important consideration is the automatic stay. So the Bankruptcy Code prohibits most creditors from taking an action to collect on amounts that are owed to them for the bankruptcy case, or continuing to litigate claims in state court. Oftentimes this offers some limited cash flow relief, but since the November fiscal emergency declaration, a lot of the district's trade creditors have already put the district on cash on demand terms. So there will be, although the automatic stay is a very important tool, it may not be as potent as in some other cases. Another important consideration is that the Bankruptcy Code allows for an orderly process to assume and assign leases, to sell assets, and to do that in a very public process. The district is already a public entity, but the Bankruptcy Code, unlike the California law that required a bunch of confidential discussions before bankruptcy, the Bankruptcy Code is really clear about a separate framework to create transparent processes within the bankruptcy court, which I think is going to be important for the district to kind of structure its transaction process and do so in a public way. Another great advantage is the district is going to be able to terminate unfavorable agreements. So that includes contracts, leases that represent an economic burden to the district. It's commonly called rejection. And what this will give the district an opportunity to do is identify burdensome agreements and allow them to be restructured without the consent of counterparties. This is important because the district has been engaged in a really long-standing process during this 5-month pre-bankruptcy period to restructure its obligations, and although it got to a lot of great results, it hasn't been able to do everything consensually that it needs to. And the final point that we see as a strong advantage to the district is the ultimate outcome of a successful bankruptcy case is the confirmation of what's called a plan of adjustment. And that allows the district to pay its debts over time and address certain liabilities over time. And as Carol was talking about, one of the big issues the district is facing is a cash flow problem. If the district is able to extend out the number of these liabilities, which is what the purpose of a bankruptcy plan is, it will be able to help it smooth out cash flow while still addressing some of the critical liabilities. Another important point that I want to mention, and again, the district is a public agency. There are already these public meetings, but to help ensure that the process is well monitored, the bankruptcy court will often appoint a neutral, which is called a patient care ombudsman, who's an unrelated third party that will report to the bankruptcy court to confirm that patient care is continuing to be taken care of in an orderly way. It provides another essential oversight role and hopefully will keep the community assured that the bankruptcy process is not going to change patient care in the district. The disadvantages that I want to talk about, one thing I kind of already mentioned was the reaction by vendors and the impact on cash flow. Oftentimes when there's a bankruptcy filing, trade vendors will get nervous and either slowly change credit terms that make it more difficult for the district to obtain goods. This was a problem that the district struggled with after the fiscal emergency declaration in November. It's typically a problem that happens on the filing of a bankruptcy case. But because the district has already addressed that, is already on new credit terms with its vendors, we don't expect that to be a significant issue. Additionally, the benefit of having to go through this in November is the district has very good open lines of communication with its trade vendors that I think are a lot more comfortable with the district's plan going forward. The fact that the district, if it approves it today, will be approving a pendency plan, which is essentially a budget that shows how the process will work out, I think will equally make trade vendors comfortable with the fact that there is a relatively well laid out plan for the district to get through this process. Another negative that I think I've heard someone mention earlier in the public comments was expense. Restructuring is expensive. There's no two ways about it. The district, as any debtor in bankruptcy would, has to hire attorneys and accountants that aren't a part of the district's normal budget, and it is expensive. What is, again, unusual in this circumstance is because this is a potential Chapter 9 filing, because this is a municipality, the district was already forced to hire restructuring counsel, financial advisors to begin the process of negotiating with parties in the confidential mediation and afterward. So the district is already incurring those expenses and has to incur those expenses before a bankruptcy case is filed. So the extent this is the typical downside of a Chapter 11 corporate restructuring, it doesn't have quite the same effect here. And the final issue is time. A bankruptcy case requires a longer time to come to a plan of adjustment than could be reached theoretically outside of bankruptcy. Again here though, the district has already put in 5 months of hard work with its critical stakeholders. And although it's been able to restructure a certain amount of its liabilities, it hasn't been able to do it everywhere it needs to. So again, while time is a downside to a bankruptcy process, the district has actually already tried to mitigate that issue. So I just want to kind of run through the eligibility requirements. We've talked about the advantages and disadvantages. Now I just want to go through whether or not the district is actually eligible under state law and bankruptcy, the bankruptcy code, to be a debtor in bankruptcy. The first requirement is that the debtor be, that the district be an instrumentality of the state, which the district easily satisfies under California law. A healthcare district meets this criteria. The second requirement is state law authority. States can choose whether or not their municipalities are eligible to file for bankruptcy in the first place. California has chosen 2 avenues for a municipality to file. One avenue is a fiscal emergency declaration, which is what the district adopted in November when it thought it had only a month worth of cash remaining. Once the district resolved that, it then went down the second path, which is the neutral evaluation process. This is what we commonly have been referring to as the confidential mediation. The district went through that process for 60 days. It wasn't able to reach an agreement with the majority, not the majority, with all of its stakeholders. And as a result, it has also satisfied that avenue to file as well. The next requirement is insolvency. The district's going to need to demonstrate that it's insolvent. There are several types of insolvency that I'm not going to get into in detail. Principally, the 3 that the district is facing is budget insolvency, the challenge of being able to present a budget that demonstrates it's able to maintain its operations into the future. Long-run insolvency, which is whether or not the district can meet expenditures on a long-term basis. And then the final is service delivery insolvency, whether or not the district is able to meet its obligations to the city or to the community that it serves, and to meet its desires for providing a certain level of welfare and health care. Again, as the current budgets show the district running out of cash in the future, that mission is now being challenged by the cash flow constraints of the district. So on those 3 bases, the district can establish it's insolvent. Next, it will need to establish that it intends to address its debts. The pendency plan provides a detailed path for the district to address its debts, either through a transaction with an affiliate or by going it alone into the future. The district also needs to show it attempted to restructure its debts outside of bankruptcy. I've covered that over the last 5 months. It has attempted to restructure both through the confidential mediation process and in its efforts to do so after that process concluded. Another requirement is good faith. The district has to file in good faith, which means it has to make reasonable efforts to deal with its creditors. Again, the district participated in the confidential mediation process, and then, although not obligated to do so, has been undertaking months of additional negotiations to try to reach a consensual agreement with its principal stakeholders. And then the final requirement is authority. The district board would need to authorize the resolution that's currently pending before you to authorize the filing of a bankruptcy case. If that last step is taken, we believe the district satisfies the requirements to file a Chapter 9 petition. That's the end of my presentation. If there are any questions.
Are there any more questions on the report that was given?
I've got just a couple of comments. Our goal, everybody in the room and our whole, the board up here and just everybody all together, we're trying to maintain quality care in our community, quality business operations, and quality of just a top quality organization. The bankruptcy has many facets to it that have to be approved. If the board were to move on this tonight, there's other facets. We have to get a judge to accept this. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But we have to have a judge accept our assumptions as far as solvency and sustainability. If we were to vote for Chapter 9 and go through the whole procedure, with your experience, how certain are you that we're going to be able to find the proper suitor for our organization?
Well,
I think that's
So I'll speak to, you're absolutely right. There's a process, there will be an initial phase in the court where the court will actually rule on eligibility. And as Mr. Cockroft indicated, we believe that we do meet those requirements. That's why it's important for us to present those to you. And then we will get into the process of proposing a plan of adjustment of debts, which is what you do in Chapter 9 bankruptcy. And that process will, we hope, at that point, be driven by a transaction which, with either one of the entities or parties that the district has been in discussions with to date, or maybe a new one who will find Hazel Hawkins attractive once it has taken advantage of the opportunities to utilize the Chapter 9 protections to restructure its debts. And I think probably, I know Mr. Compost was going to say something, but Carol who's actually, her organization has been in communication with some of these folks, and she's actually got on the business side of some of these transactions, could talk a little bit more with Mr. Freeman here about kind of what the prognosis would look like as well.
Carol, do you want to touch on that?
On what the prognosis of a sale transaction would look like?
Yes, after filing Chapter 9, what does that change?
So I think that the Chapter 9 filing, I can't say definitively, but I can say that in my experience, a couple things happen in Chapter 9, or in my experience, it's Chapter 11. But one of the things that happens is the buyers feel a little bit more confident that they're not the bad people, that they're not the ones that come in and buy the hospital and then make all these changes. And I think they feel more empowered by the situation. There's also certain things that bankruptcy just allows buyers to do, and one of those things is to assume the assets free and clear of liabilities, which is a little bit different in a chapter 9 than in a chapter 11, but I understand that the pendency plan also takes that into account, and that's something that's very attractive to buyers now. And what that means generally is when they step in and buy the asset, then anything that could potentially be a lawsuit to them or a liability to them is addressed in some way, shape, or form. And there's a variety of vehicles for that, but so that I would say are the two big benefits to a buyer, is that they feel somewhat more empowered by a bankruptcy, just vis-a-vis the fact that they don't come in and they're not the heavy hand that's changed the operations, and then also though that they're able, that it kind of polishes the asset up in their minds.
And I think just to add to that, the polishing of the asset issue, I mean, we have to remember that this is not, and it's kind of laid out in the pendency plan, this is not a step that the district needs to take specifically for a transaction partner. It's a step the district, we believe, needs to take either outcome, whether the district is able to find a partner or whether the district is able to, or is required to go it alone in some sort of different construction. Either way, the current liabilities are unsustainable, as the current cash flow shows. So the issue of polishing it for a transaction partner really is setting it on a healthier footing. And the notion is that a transaction partner is going to be more interested in a healthier, stabilized business than a not healthier, not as stabilized one as we are right now. Either way, though, these are changes that would need to be made for the district to continue forward in some way or another.
Other questions or comments, Joseph?
If the board decides to file this chapter 9, you don't have a buyer, you don't have somebody that comes in, what happens then? What happens?
If we don't have a buyer, I think that's what Nick was just saying, is we need to change some of the core business of the hospital in order to even have a chance at a buyer or to survive.
So that means that all our contracts will be canceled.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's right.
Can folks speak into the mic? I don't think folks can hear.
No.
My question was,
Yeah, they're not working.
my question was that if the board decides to adopt chapter 9, what happens if we do not have a buyer or somebody that could come in and merge with us? What will happen? Does all our contracts
Yes.
are terminated?
So they can be rejected through the bankruptcy process. There's a whole process between that. But to what Mr. Cockroft and Ms. Fox said earlier, whether or not the ultimate outcome is through an acquisition or a partnership or through the district, realigning and going it alone, it's the vehicle of Chapter 9 that will provide the tools to be able to do that, because as it's going now, it's just a matter of time before the district runs out of cash and is unable to continue to operate.
So in other words, all contracts will be canceled?
Well,
We'll start from-
it's an opportunity, not everything's automatic. It's an opportunity.
I've had personal experience with a Chapter 11 bankruptcy back in the 70s with our family corporation. It was a way that we were able to restructure our business. This is right in the middle of the first gas crash, 1973. Anyway, long story short, the Chapter 11 gave our corporation a chance to restructure itself and to sustain itself for another 25 years. And it seemed a little, looking at the number of facets we had to deal with, we got through those. And we had a very successful Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and the corporation did last for 25 years at that point. And it will last even longer if you wish. But anyways, it's not the end of the world to go into a bankruptcy situation. It's not the most preferred item to go with. However, and there's a certain expense and certain restrictions on it, but it is possible. And the nice thing was, we had excellent services, excellent wages, excellent products still rolling out of our factory on Fallon Road. And anyhow, it was an amazing time, and that Chapter 11 sustained us.
Director Pat, did you have a question?
This is a question for Seth in regards to the Adams report. Just, the Adams report came out in February of last year. Have there been any substantial things which suggest a change or a deviation from the financial profile projections? I mean, we've already exceeded the negative adjusted net income for the year, so that shows that things are actually even worse than was projected, but could you speak to that matter?
I think Carol's more familiar with that particular detail, but basically, I do know that the Adams study presupposed a very different situation in terms of a hospital's capital capacity, and that's really the issue.
Carol, do you want to say anything to that, the Adams report and the change?
No, that's, Seth characterized that properly, and as far as it goes, in terms of the plan, I think the lowest plan was in the about $150 million, and then it ranged up from there to about $275 million. Again, it's kind of what I said in my report, and Seth just reiterated. It involves a lot of money and a lot of time.
And additionally, the Adams report was kind of answering a different question. The Adams report was answering the question, what would it look like if the district were able to maintain all of its current services and work forward into the future? And the answer that they came to was it needs to increase its market share in the community to 70% of healthcare services. And it needs to do that by expanding the beds in the hospital to 60 to 70, expanding service offerings so that it actually creates a more comprehensive healthcare system. And Carol's right, the range of those costs, which would require building out new facilities, things like that, was between, I think, $215 million and $267 million, given the three options that Adams proposed. But it was also kind of a different question. Now, they did propose other changes that weren't facility changes that should go along with that. That is recruiting new physicians, recruiting new service lines, and those, low or no cost measures were implemented by the district, but obviously the large capital projects were just beyond its capacity.
And then the last thing that there's mentioning here, and as far as expanding acute care beds right now, is that currently the district is designated by CMS as a critical access hospital, which means that it's limited to operating 25 beds. So the notion that the district could go out tomorrow and open up for 75 beds is not there. It's possible down the line, but again, that timeline will likely exceed our cash budget.
Does that answer your question? If we have no further board questions, we'll open up to public comment. We have right now at the moment about 10 of you, typically with our meeting criteria. If there's 6 or more, we go to 2 minutes, but we're going to allow you the 3 minutes tonight. Let's try to keep it as brief as we possibly can, because there are a lot of people that would like to speak. So who do we have next to come up?
Isabella Zamer.
Hi, everyone.
I don't believe that mic is on, so you'll just have to speak loudly.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Isabella Zender. I'm
a registered nurse here at Hazel Hawkins. I've been here for 10 years. I absolutely love my career, my profession. I work on the med surg department here. As a registered nurse, my responsibility is to be as a sworn patient advocate and to deliver the best patient care that I can. That means I have to do whatever it takes to make sure my patients are getting the best care possible and that have the resources I need to safely care for them. Even if it means objecting to unsafe staffing, having a lack of crucial medical supplies, and or pushing for safe and necessary medical equipment. That often means I must hold those at the top of administration and nursing accountable to ensure I have what I need as a registered nurse. Tonight, this elected board has the same duty. Instead of making what could be a dangerous decision that puts the community and our patients at risk, you need to act as nurses do. You need to act as an advocate for those you were elected to serve and protect. You need to hold those at the top of administration accountable. One, and you need to explore every possible route and exhaust all of the avenues to maintain that our hospital, our beloved Hazel Hawkins, stays open. It's the only public hospital here in San Diego County, and refuse to accept false solutions. And two, bankruptcy and balancing the budget on the backs of our patients is not acceptable. It's not the right thing to do. It just hurts each and one of us and our patients. Please stand with Hazel Hawkins nurses and act as a patient and public health advocate. Thank you.
Thank you, board, for allowing me the 3 minutes that I had prepared for public comment. Hello, my fellow registered nurses and my colleagues and community members, members of the press and board. Thank you. My name is Vanessa Lockhart. I'm a registered nurse and I work in the emergency department here. I did come prepared for public comment, but there's something urgent that I would like to bring up prior to my prepared information. One of our registered nurses within the last 45 minutes was forcibly removed from the room for this open meeting. And I'm really finding it hard to understand why that occurred. She was removed and immediately taken to the Human Resources Department, which is nothing I've ever heard of before. She was not violent. She was not disrespectful. She was not inciting rioting or being insubordinate. So if you could please provide to maybe my union leader, Diane Beck, the CNA nurse rep, which actual HR policy you were following at the time, that would be really helpful to help us understand what actually occurred. Thank you. I'm here tonight to ask this elected board some crucial questions as you weigh in on this historical and life-changing vote. I'm also here speaking to you as the emergency department nurse with 27 years of experience on the front lines. As an expert in my field, I've managed thousands of health and life-threatening situations for my patients. Under my licensure as a registered nurse in the state of California, I also have to act as an advocate for my patients in all of these situations. This is what I want you to think about when I ask you to consider these key questions before you make your decision for our community. I understand that this board is about to make a decision for all of San Benito County. If Hazel Hawkins closes as a result of your decision tonight, I urge you to realize it will also impact all of the Central Coast hospitals. The Central Coast hospitals will have to care for the thousands of patients who no longer have a community hospital here in San Benito County. Please think about what you are voting for tonight and how it will actually impact you and your family. What I want to ask you all tonight is a very real question for an emergency department nurse. Where are you going to go if Hazel Hawkins faces drastic cuts from your decision, or if it actually closes? What hospital will you or your loved one be forced to receive treatment at? Also consider the life-threatening situations. Will you and your loved ones make it to the facility in time? What will you do when seconds count? Please consider these what ifs that are a very real possibility. What if you, your child, your husband, your wife, your mom, your friend, or anybody that you know has a stroke? What hospital will you or your loved one be forced to receive treatment at? What if a new mom in your family is having an emergency situation and must have a C-section to save her unborn child? What if you don't have health insurance and your child or your grandchild has a high fever and is at risk for seizures and it's getting worse and worse? What if? These what ifs are real and they happen every day. That's my world. I am one of the registered nurses you see when it gets to the worst case scenario. I am the nurse who makes sure that you or your loved one gets the right care. I'm the seasoned emergency department registered nurse at your public district hospital. We, Hazel Hawkins registered nurses, are those nurses who will do whatever it takes to care for you with the utmost compassion at any hour, day or night. As your community nurses, we will use every tool at our disposal and we will advocate for you no matter what. Your publicly elected board who are about to make a major decision that affects the entire San Benito County. Tonight, I'm here to stand with my fellow Hazel Hawkins nurses to say, make the right decision. Stand with our patients, stand with our nurses, and stand with saving our community's hospital. I have to get back to the emergency room now as I take my protective break to come in to address this board. But let me be, is that 3 minutes?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, though.
Thank you for your time.
I'm gonna announce before we have another speaker, we need to hold our applause, okay? So after we've had our meeting, we can have the discussions outside the room.
Press? We're going in order. We'll continue the order.
Sonia.
So yeah.
Good evening to my fellow nurses, hospital staff, and our community. My name is Sonia Duran, and I'm a registered nurse in the medical surgical department at Hazel Hawkins. I am also a CNA nurse representative and the chairperson of our union patient practice committee on behalf of our patients and frontline nurses. Sadly and not surprisingly, our nurses are standing before this publicly elected hospital board of directors once again in solidarity with our fellow hospital staff, neighbors, family, and friends of Hollister and the San Benito County community to call on each and every one of you to do the right thing. Hazel Hawkins nurses have always stood up against all odds to advocate for our patients. That is why we are here again today. We want to make it clear to our community and to the district board that Hazel Hawkins nurses have only one bottom line, our patients. And we will stand united to defend our patients and our community's only hospital. Last November, this district board declared a fiscal emergency and granted authority to declare Chapter 9 bankruptcy. Despite that decision, our Hazel nurses have continued to provide the best possible care to our patients. However, over the course of this year, we have been left dangerously short on vital medical supplies and have faced constant uncertainties as to whether the hospital will even make payroll. This year, we made the difficult decision to postpone our January wage increases to April of 2023 in the spirit of prioritizing the needs of our community. We expect that hospital administration and the district board do the same. Yet rather than having the hospital open up the books and own up to their mistakes, you all are instead pursuing bankruptcy again and seeking to balance the budget on the backs of our frontline nurses, our key hospital staff, and our patients. Hazel Hawkins Memorial Hospital is vital to the public health and must remain a full-service hospital to the community. Given that it is one of the few facilities that serve our rural population, it is even more critical to ensure that the hospital remains open and that all current healthcare services are maintained to continue delivering critical, life-saving care to the patients in our rural community. Tonight, we want to hear nothing less than the commitment from each and every one of you, to elected board of directors, that you will do everything in your power to not allow our community's hospital to fail under your governance. Thank you. Good
to my fellow registered nurses, hospital staff, and our community members. My name is Diane Bach. I'm a registered nurse in the medical surgical department. I've been here at Hazel Hawkins for 12 years. I'm also the chief nurse representative for our sister union, which is the California Nursing Association. I stand here yet again with so many of my fellow RNs to sound a major warning before this elected board of directors to make a decision that could negatively impact our patients and our health of our community. I am incredibly disappointed that the hospital is again considering the drastic option of filing for bankruptcy when they haven't fully committed to other options on the table. The hospital administration has publicized their efforts in doing outreach to state and county elected officials calling for emergency funding. But what they try to bury behind these efforts is the fact that they have refused to offer transparency into their operations by opening their financial books or making commitments to cut spending from the top. What they are not announcing is that no one is willing to consider these options seriously. As frontline nurses, we are outraged by the continued lack of transparency throughout this process. Our community deserves information on the potential devastating decisions like this, and the board of directors needs to meaningfully include the voices of crucial stakeholders like patients, workers, and community members. But rather than take a full accountability, you are all considering pursuing the drastic option of bankruptcy or leaving the hospital in the hands of an outside entity. Let me make this clear. We don't want a solution at all costs. We want a strong community-run hospital that ensures the highest level of patient care to the constituents of San Benito County. The only way we are going to receive outside help is if there is trust that the hospital leadership will lead in a transparent and accountable way. Yet this hospital administration has been recalcitrant and refuses to do what is right at every turn of this process. There is no way with this current administration. Tonight, it is time for each and every one of you to, as elected board of directors, to turn this ship around and demand accountability for our failed leadership. Thank you.
We cannot have applause after each comment. We want to get this process going.
Good evening, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Eddie Perez, a member of NUHW. I have worked at Hazel Hawkins for 20 years. Like so many of my colleagues, I am concerned about what is happening at my hospital. We in NUHW were meeting with management over the last several weeks in an attempt to see what part we could play in survival of the hospital. Unfortunately, management was only interested in concession after concession that would in essence gut our contract that we have fought for so many years to attain. We want to help not just because it's the right thing to do, but because we owe it to our community and our patients. But we cannot allow ourselves to be taken advantage of. I say this because the hospital has not been transparent regarding its finances. I fear that they are relying on declaring Chapter 9 only for the purpose of achieving in court with a judge what they could not achieve in discussions with us. We know we are seeking a partner or buyer for our hospital, but it causes me to wonder if they are wanting to reduce our wages and benefits to make the hospital more attractive to a would-be buyer. I'm here to ask the board not to authorize the seeking of Chapter 9 and for the hospital to be transparent about its plans regarding possible partners or buyers and to show us the books. Management of Hazel Hawkins should not be allowed to hurt this community or disrespect its employees by selling to the lowest bidder. We ask you to vote no on Chapter 9.
How you doing today? My name is Dr. Peter Coelho. I've served the community of Hollister for 23 years. Spent a lot of weekends, holidays, and nights in your heart, liver babies, working in the ICU, and knew Isabella before she ever went to nursing school and raising kids. And some of these people in here that are now nurses were children when I started. I took over for Dr. Curry, and so I've been here for 23 years, and if I follow Dr. Curry, I'll be here for the next 23 years. So the key thing here, I want you guys to all understand, is running rural healthcare is really difficult. And every one of you guys here have a heart. You've dealt with a ton of stress, a lot of misjudgment, and I apologize for our community. This is a passionate project for all of us. And God bless you for working so hard, and I don't think you're getting the credit for the strain you're under and the judgment you're taking. And we all have a vested interest and future interest in this hospital and the economics of this county, and this is a key driver in that county. My concern here, I'm not a paid member of Hazel Hawkins Hospital, but I have a very strong interest in the future of the next few decades here and how we could go forward as a rural hospital. Some of the other physicians have also joined together. As I sat down with different entities that I would have considered no-brainers on how to turn around a critical care rural hospital, I asked them what were their discussions with Hazel Hawkins, and they were like, we haven't heard from them. Watsonville failed. Critical care access, not critical, but a rural hospital. Their consultants hadn't heard from them, and they just had a successful turnaround. Talked to El Camino Hospital, rural district hospital, very successful. How'd you do it? You guys been advising Hazel Hawkins? We haven't heard a damn thing from them. You guys get us 3 licenses. We'd love to talk to you. But this is not my job. But it is my job. I'm a custodian of humanity here, like all of you are here. I'm perplexed at the lack of creativity and basically pronouncing that Hazel dead again. I feel like I'm looking through the eyes of Thomas Hawkins back in 1902. Well, Hazel had a two-day wagon ride to Monterey. There are other alternatives than bankruptcy. I think bankruptcy may be a very important avenue that we take to restructure the finances. Guys, we all have to keep the hospital alive. It has to be profitable. And if we don't all share in that potluck, if you load up your plate, the place goes down. So it's going to have to be a community project. My concern is bankruptcy may increase your legal
You can have my 3
fees.
minutes.
What's that?
You can have my 3 minutes.
I'm concerned that premature Chapter 9 may increase your rates.
I'm sorry, we're not gonna be able to
Okay,
allow that.
I understand. Sorry.
Good job,
Be disrespectful with the asking of not applauding afterwards. We're gonna have to take a 5-minute recess to reconvene. So if you could please allow us to, get back to this meeting without interruptions. We will hold off on the reconvening, but if it happens again, we're done. Okay? We're trying to be respectful to you by giving you the time. Please give us the respect by allowing us to continue this meeting. So who is that? From Roxy Montana?
We actually have another nurse that made the trip down. Please pardon me, Roxy. From San Jose, and got someone to replace her because she lives here.
Okay.
And she's a registered nurse.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Lonnie Sanchez. I am a member of this community, and yes, I am a registered nurse also. So for me, last Tuesday when I found out that Hazel Hawkins was going to file bankruptcy, I just happened to be in Sacramento lobby, and I just happened to be able to speak to our district representative in Robert Rivas' office to let him know what was happening to our community, where this was going to take us, in hopes that when I spoke to him, it wouldn't fall on deaf ears. So I know that they told us there was money that was going to be deviated, but how you choose or how you guys are going to choose who gets what is what we're looking at you guys for, to make those right decisions, okay? As a registered nurse and a vested member of this community for close to 10 years, I've seen this city grow, and it is evidenced by housing and traffic. The community deserves to have this vital resource of a hospital to care for our young children, our elderly, and those that come to this area of Hollister to enjoy the parks and the recreation sphere. The closest hospital here to Hollister would be, I believe, St. Louis. And we all know that time is precious. And when we have our loved ones that we're trying to get across town when they're sick, injured, or had a stroke or a heart attack, we know what it's like to travel down that road. We all know what it's like. So, I just wanted to let you know that there are also many good physicians, nurses, and ancillary staff that left due to this hospital's financial crumbling. The mismanagement of those in charge has led us to this very moment. To see the hospital get undermined by deceitful practices is shameful. Chapter 9 bankruptcy is just the beginning of further decline. I understand there are several hospitals that are interested in carrying Hazel Hawkins, Kaiser, Sutter, Dominican. Please choose wisely, where those on top will not walk away with a nice package deal. The people of Hollister deserve better. Montana.
Any more nurses?
You're more important anyway.
Good evening, I'm Roxy Montana. Thank you, directors, staff. And I would like to start with, I'm just a citizen, but just a citizen who votes, just a citizen who talks to a lot of other citizens. And I first addressed this board many months ago, and the issue was transparency. And I'm hard pressed to find a word better than whipsaw, because it's been bankruptcy to start with, and it's been an issue, last month it was a line of credit, and here we are again, bankruptcy. I'd like to say that tomorrow marks 2 weeks of me taking a loved one to hospitals in the area. And it started with Hazel Hawkins, in the middle of the night, driving like that in an ambulance to get here. And I can tell you that the staff here, thank you, because they did everything they could. And then a patient was transferred to a larger, bigger hospital. And our staff here is so valuable and just as good. And we ended up at another hospital. And so I'm very grateful, as are the citizens in our community, for what we do have and must preserve. Our group, as you know, has met weekly. We've spoken with city officials, county officials. We've spoken with a lot of people, including doctors. And we feel that it's time to just take a breath, and maybe bankruptcy is where you do ultimately go. Breath, let's have discussions with other people, with other and creative solutions that are potential, because failure is not an option. Thank you.
Rob Bernowski.
Good evening again, and before you start the clock, if I could make a point of order. People showing emotions is not disrupting your proceedings, because you're not trying to talk amongst each other. They're allowed to clap, they're allowed to show, they're not interrupting you deliberating. So, that said, and you've got to stop the animosity between yourselves and the public. We are here because we're interested. I'm sorry?
That is not our
I understand, you're allowed to respond to me because you're not deliberating amongst yourselves, so. Anyway, first point, would you mind clarifying the resolution that you're going to vote on? Is it to file the actual bankruptcy, or are you just authorizing it? And at some point in the future, if you choose to, then you will file for the petition. So if you could clarify that for us, I think that would be very helpful. I have another question. Have any of the advisors, the substantial advisors or legal counsel, have they ever filed a Chapter 9 before? Are they experts in it, or are they learning on our dime? Because I heard one of the advisors say, I've never done Chapter 9 before. I've only done Chapter 11. So I want to appeal to you board members. I don't know if you've ever had any incredibly serious decisions to make. The ones that we've had in my family are sadly cancer decisions. And where people, including my household, have gotten the notice, hey, you have cancer and it's serious. The first thing they do is they don't go and say, well, take out that part, or do this, or do that. You stop, you pause, you look at what all your options are. You consult with a lot of different experts. I want to build on what Dr. Coelho said. Have you talked to El Camino? Have you talked to Watsonville? Where are their advisors? Because they've been through it before. From what I understand, B. Riley's never even been in this space before. No, and the fact that I can't see their bills doesn't let me know who they're talking to. So, anyway, the one thing that gets my emotions going is when this first started, I've been at every single board meeting, and the discussion has been very minimal. What I would have expected is you guys to be meeting weekly and answering the questions that I do in my profession when I'm helping a distressed company. And this is what I would expect the report to say. The district has shopped around the hospital, and blank entities initially signed non-disclosure agreements. Out of those, blank have indicated an offer will be forthcoming, blank have indicated no interest, and blank have given no indication of what they want to do. The district has the data room for interested parties to examine due diligence materials, and blank potential partners have requested access. I haven't heard that discussed at all here. So what I'm asking for, table this for now, digest it for a while, bring it back next week, call an emergency meeting. Really think about it. It is as heavy as that cancer decision that so many make.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please keep it down. You're welcome.
Okay. I'm throat surgery, so I really need to save and be very easy on my vocal cords. But thank you, Robert Bernowski. First of all, the person is bankruptcy is not dangerous. Why you have taken so long to do this, and why you have lost so many opportunities because you have not been in bankruptcy, is a failure as an entire board for giving the authority to a small couple of people who have no experience. All these red shirts here, I've been in this hospital many a times as my son over the years. Never had I had a bad experience. I'm having the bad experience today because I'm really upset that they have failed to be here to make sure that you're not in the position you are today. They pay union fees. Where are the union reps to come and ask you and have you for transparency? Yet today they're here and saying, oh, well, their job is that, it's their paycheck. Now that's their pocketbook is personally being affected. When they say that we're here, we love the community, I want to believe that they want to be here because they feel that they love their community and not because their pocketbooks have been affected. You have failed the entire community. I've been coming here for months, and I haven't seen any of these faces. But I continue to say the same thing. Transparency is what, the lack of transparency
is what has gotten you here. The Adams report. What did you end up doing with the Adams report? Tossed it out, and you fired people, and then you gave a person, in my opinion, that is not qualified and was a board member when she was hired at in a position that she actually was not experienced for. Then you fired the CEO, and then you gave her the interim CEO position. Shame on all of you. I had to go back and I have read all the minutes, all the agendas. I have everything in chronological order where you have failed. And no one, unfortunately, there is no one here to hold you accountable. But today they're here. Bankruptcy is the way to go. I have 35 plus years experience, and I started off in bankruptcy where the trustees came in and they took over. You don't have experience, let the experts come in and take over. Thank you.
Are there any other comments that have not turned in a card? Yes. We'll just take the one more comment and then we're going to move on with our meeting.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dean Castro. All I wanted to do is just echo what the other doctors have said. I just think it would be nice if, and like everybody else said it, if we just take a bit of extra time to see what these other avenues are. I think it's amazing that our doctors have actually banded together because we don't have a union and we don't usually help each other out. We do, but not banding together in an actual organization to save a community hospital. So I think it would be great if you guys would actually give them a chance to see if there's options that could work without going through bankruptcy. And all we're asking for is time, which I don't think is a lot to ask, considering. So,
Okay, at this time, we're going to close the hearing and move on with our agenda. I'm sorry. We will reopen our board discussion, but not public comment. So,
Well, okay, such a question for you, Riley.
Speak up, Devin, please.
Yes, okay, I would like to ask a question of B. Riley in order to just sort of illustrate one point in regards to the finances, which is to say, in terms of our financial forecasts and our financial models, what is roughly the per month anticipated projected difference between our cash flow in a Chapter 9, with a Chapter 9 filing versus our cash flow without a Chapter 9 filing? Can you speak to that now? Carol?
Carol, did you?
Yeah,
The difference?
I heard the question. So what is the difference between the cash flow now with the Chapter 9 filing or without, as it is today?
Yes.
Yes.
I really don't think that there's going to be much of a difference in the services that we're providing, the level of services that we're providing now versus a Chapter 9 scenario. So I would say that the cash flow would be the same with respect to our fees, with respect to contracts or other adjustments that Mr. Cockcroft and I highlighted in our conversation. We anticipate a savings of about $2 million in the next 6 months.
So is that going through, what the plan is for going into Chapter 9 and the restructuring?
That's correct.
So 2 million in 6 months, the next 6 months?
That's correct.
So that's the difference there.
It's through implementing dependency.
Is that net? Is that
So-
net?
Well, because you've got your consultant fees and attorney fees.
How about you just not have comment at this time? This is during.
No, I mean, we're mixing apples and oranges here. The $2 million is derived from the operational, highlights that Mr. Cockroft and I highlighted in our presentation vis-a-vis, caps in employee benefits, the projection of certain contracts, and operational enhancements that can be achieved in a Chapter 9.
My next question is for Heidi for our legal counsel. My next question is for Heidi for our legal counsel, and that is with regards to, in terms of the calendar and the timeline for this Chapter 9. Are there any particular kind of court season or federal bankruptcy court season deadlines or timelines? I understand that there would be one challenge with regards to if this board were to hold a special election for the voters to approve a matter, there are certain calendars. Could you speak towards the sort of the calendar requirements and the calendar challenges of an immediate action on a Chapter 9 action versus whether there is any window for further delay or?
Through the President, Director Pack, if you have questions about the timing of the bankruptcy, that should be referred to your bankruptcy counsel, Michael Sweet or Nick Cockroft.
Okay.
If you're asking about the timeline for any type of special election to approve an eventual transaction, that would be a different question that I can answer.
I can speak to that if I may. So that is one of the things that we've been looking at, is the timing in order to be on, depending on what transaction might ultimately materialize, there could be a need to go to voters for approval. And in order to be on the November ballot, I believe, and Heidi can speak to this, I believe the deadline is about August 30th. It's give or take Labor Day weekend to get the ballots printed and get the materials out, as you know, you've all been involved in that process. So, and if we roll back, you know, that gives us just a few months between now and August to confirm eligibility and enter into a process and potentially meet with the suitor to get a plan in front of the court and move on towards potential transaction if it were to require being on the ballot. So that is one of the deadlines we're looking at. Thank you for asking.
And I can also add to that, Director, another deadline that we're looking at, if you review the pendency plan contemplates the adoption of these operational enhancements by July 1st. So when Ms. Fox gives you the $2 million in savings that we anticipate following the filing of a bankruptcy case for the remainder of the calendar year, that's with the assumption that those changes take effect by July 1st. In order to get those changes, we have to back into it even more because we have to request court authority and get an order from the bankruptcy court to make some of those adjustments that we haven't been able to make outside of the bankruptcy case. That process is maybe about a 30-day process. So when you're looking at July 1st and you're thinking 30 days more, kind of presents a pretty short time to get the savings that we contemplate in the pendency plan. Any delay in implementing those savings results in less savings throughout the course of the year because the plan is implemented for a briefer period of time.
And just one point of clarification in regards to the clauses. My reading of the resolution is it says authorizes and directs the authorized representative on behalf of the name of the district to execute Chapter 9 petition. So my reading of that language is that it would be basically an immediate or nearly immediate filing of Chapter 9 petition. It would not just be an authorization of the power and discretion. So it would have an immediate effect. It would not just mean at the CEO's discretion. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah,
there are no further questions from the board regarding this resolution,
Madam Chair, can Mary please explain to the audience that, again, reiterate what we have been saying, that the hospital will not be closed? Because everybody that's spoken has said, we will not allow the hospital to close. We want to have patient care. We want them to have patient care. Yes. We do not want the hospital closed.
Thank you, Director Sanchez.
They need to know that we do not want them.
that is a unanimous decision with all of us, regardless of what the outcome of tonight is. We are all community members here ourselves. We are all vested in this community. We do not want to see this hospital closed. We have all of your backs here, regardless of what you feel tonight. We are making decisions based on what is best for the community. We truly are. So please allow us to make our decisions however we need to. And we respect you, and please respect us as well in this decision making.
And thank you, Director Sanchez, on that too, because that is, I think, what Hernandez said, what we all have in common. And entering into chapter 9 is another tool that we talked about that we need in order to change the way we do business here at Hazel Hawkins, in order to keep the doors open, in order to give us a chance to try everything. This is another way of us doing that. And it's very important that we try everything, because we are all committed to keeping these doors open and keeping healthcare in San Benito County. We want it long-term. We need the time to find the strategic partners. We're all needing this next move.
So I'm going to make the motion to consider board resolution number 2023-27, authorizing the filing of a chapter 9 petition, investing authority to file, and resolution number 2023-28, adopting a pendency plan. Do we have a second?
Consider or approve?
It is written here as considered. But we are going to be approving that this evening for clarification. Okay. So we are going to consider approval of board resolution number 2023-27, authorizing the filing of a chapter 9 petition. Do we have a second? I made the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, and we have a roll call vote.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Pat.
Aye.
Director Sanchez.
Aye.
Director Shelton.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on to consider approval of vesting authority to file and resolution number 2023-28, adopting a pendency plan. I make the motion. Do we have a second? Motion to approve.
Second.
May we have a roll call vote?
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Pat.
Aye.
Director Sanchez.
Aye.
Director Shelton.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 5-0, motion passes. Moving on to action items, consider recognition of board approval of Dr. Malik, professional services agreement for a contract term of 1 year and an estimated annual cost of $336,960. We have a report on that.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to really stress that this is a budget neutral contract that we're bringing to you. Dr. Malik is a very important part of our community and providing services to our community. She has worked with us for years at the First Street Clinic, and she was previously contracted through your medical.
Excuse me, can we have order in the meeting room, please? Yes,
She previously was through your medical group, and as you know, we separated that contract, and so we
proposing to directly contract with her, so it's budget neutral, because we were already paying that through your medical. So again, she is booked out several months in clinic, and we would like to continue her services. Very critical to our community. So we would like you to consider that.
Are there any more questions on the report? If none, may we have a motion to approve? Excuse me, is there any public comment on Dr. Malik's contract? Yes.
I'm actually Dr. Malik's assistant, and I speak for over 350 patients that she sees herself. She is very needed in the community. I can't imagine without her here all the patients, and it's just herself pretty much and the nurse practitioner that's been helping her. But I really suggest we do need her in this community, and she needs extra help, but I can't imagine without her. So I hope you guys do.
Thank you. Public comment?
I'm Deborah Armstrong, I'm assistant principal at the high school, and Dr. Malik has been unbelievably supportive of our students, so we obviously have a shortage of medical providers for the children in our community, and we are so very grateful. We wish there were 5 of her.
Yes, thank you so much. May we have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve, Dr. Malik. Is that correct?
Okay, may we have a roll call vote?
Director Hernandez. Aye. Director Johnson. Director Cox. Director Sanchez. Director Shelton.
Okay, ayes have it, vote 5-0.
Thank you. The second one is for Dr. Jane. Same situation, came through our medical group that we've separated. He would like to do a direct contract, same price, same budget neutral. Very important part of our community. And he also sees patients in our 2 SNFs, as well as will round on our inpatients. He's in the clinic as well, so he's covering all areas. Very important. If we could turn off our cell phones, that would be greatly appreciated.
If we can keep all our public comments that you have with each other, could you please go out into the hallway so we can continue our meeting?
Again, very important part of our community. We encourage you to consider this contract as well, a direct contract.
May we have a motion to approve? May we have any public comment on Dr. Jane?
I'll do a quick comment. I work in the hospital, obviously. I deal with neurologic patients, and I have spoken to him one time. I have never seen him round in the hospital. I really hope that he can round in the hospital because it would be very beneficial for the patients that we have with neurological problems. We do have the teleneuro service, which has been enhanced recently, which is great, except we don't actually have a rollout plan for it. So there's a lot of operational issues that need to be taken care of. But it would be wonderful if he actually came around in the hospital. So I hope that happens.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, may we have a motion to approve? I will motion to approve Dr. Jane Professional Service Agreement for a contract term of 1 year and an estimated annual cost of $400,000. Do we have a second? Okay, do we have roll call vote?
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Johnson. Director Cox. Director Sanchez. Director Shelton.
Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you very much. We're going to go into our closed session right now, but we have public comment. If you have any public comment for our closed session items only, you may do so at this point.